Chapter 8. The Experiment. "The 1st of June," Meg cried out happily. "The Kings are off to the seashore tomorrow, and then I'm free for 3 whole months." Jo smiled at her sister. "I have vacation too," she said. "Aunt March left this afternoon." "I'm going to sleep late and do nothing," Meg sighed. Jo glanced at the pile of books at her side. "I'm going to sit in my favorite apple tree and read every day." Amy turned to Beth. "Why don't we put away our lessons for a while and take some time off too?" she suggested. "If it's all right with Mother," Beth replied. "I'd love to learn some new music." The girls all turned to their mother, who sat sewing in what they called Marmy's corner. Mrs. March smiled. "You may try your experiment for a week and see how you like it," she told them. "I think that by Saturday night you will find that all play and no work is as bad as all work and no play." "Oh dear no!" Meg exclaimed. "I think we shall find it wonderful." The next morning Meg did not get out of bed until 10 o'clock. She ate breakfast by herself, and she noticed the room felt lonely and untidy, for Jo hadn't bothered to straighten up as she usually did. Beth had not dusted, and Amy's books lay scattered about. Meg finally took a seat in Marmy's corner and read, while Jo left to go rowing with Laurie. Beth cleaned out her closet, and Amy left, with her easel in hand, to do some painting. At tea time, they compared notes and all agreed that it had been a delightful, though unusually long day. Meg discovered she'd ruined her favorite blue blouse in the wash. Jo had a sunburned nose and a headache. Beth's closet was unfinished and a mess, and Amy had ruined her dress after getting caught in a rain shower. Still, they assured their mother that their experiment was working well. The long days passed slowly, and by Friday night, no one would admit that they were tired of the experiment. Then on Saturday, Mrs. March gave Hannah the day off. When the girls woke up and came down for breakfast, there was none. "Mother isn't sick, only tired," Meg told her sisters. "She's going to spend the day in bed resting." Then Jo got an idea. "I'll make dinner so Mother won't have to." She ran to invite Laurie, and when she returned, Meg shook her head. "You'd better see how it turns out before inviting company." She knew Jo wasn't much of a cook. By the time Jo began preparing for dinner in the kitchen, the rest of the March household was in a state of confusion. Beth was crying over her pet canary, Pip, who had died overnight. Meg was entertaining a guest in the parlor, and one of their thin, gossipy old neighbors paid them a call, reminding them she'd been invited for dinner that evening. The dinner Jo served that night became a standing joke among the family. She overcooked the asparagus, burned the bread black, didn't buy enough seafood for everyone, and undercooked the potatoes. When everyone was seated, Jo wished she could crawl under the table as she watched her banquet go uneaten. Amy giggled. Meg looked distressed. The neighbor pursed her lips, and Laurie chuckled. Then Jo remembered dessert. "Well, at least I couldn't possibly have ruined that," she thought to herself. She brought to the table a big bowl of fresh fruit and a pitcher of rich cream for topping. Everyone smiled as they portioned it out in pretty glass dishes. It wasn't until Laurie took the first bite that Jo began to worry all over again. "What is it?" Jo asked. Laurie's mouth puckered slightly. Then Amy choked out loud and hid her face in her napkin. "Salt instead of sugar," Meg replied quietly, so as not to embarrass an already mortified Jo. Jo groaned and fell back in her chair. She was on the verge of crying when she happened to catch a sight of Laurie's puckered face. Suddenly it all struck her as hilarious, and she began laughing as tears rolled down her face. Soon everyone else was laughing too. Even Croaker, which was what they called the old neighbor. The unfortunate dinner ended gaily, with a merry feast of bread, butter, and olives, things Jo hadn't had to cook. Later, Mrs. March asked her daughters how they liked their little experiment. "Would you like to continue it for another week?" she said. "Not me," Jo cried out. "Or me," echoed the others. Lounging doesn't pay, Jo declared. "I'm going to spend the rest of my vacation learning something useful," she added. "How about cooking?" Mrs. March asked. Then everyone broke down in gales of laughter all over again.